All right, let's get our other Facebook groups up in here before it's officially time to take off on the show. Got our spinning wheels going here. 1 and 2. Welcome in. Welcome in. It is the last day of February, Tuesday evening, and I am Nick Kendell, and hopefully my internet is doing okay today, but it's good to see you. Carl, how you doing?
I'm good, man. It was 60 degrees here today. We
Wow.
got some nice sun, and kids got to go out and play a little bit, so yeah, just kind of liking it. We're getting snow like 2 days from now, and getting it downpoured on once again. But that's
It's March.
Midwest. Yeah, I was gonna say this is like that crazy time. I remember, I can't remember which draft it was, but like we lost power for 3 days because we had a giant ice storm come through at the end of April, of all things. And it was kind of a crazy time. I remember I was talking to you guys on Thursday when we're doing the draft, and Friday, Saturday, Sunday, everything's gone. So it's always a fun time this time of year. You know that. And
Yeah.
beyond that, though, lots of cool things going on. Obviously, got the combine. Excited to talk about that. Got the two Paytons getting an opportunity to talk today. So I'm
100%.
interested to hear some of your thoughts on what they had to say today.
Yeah, obviously, really, I enjoyed Sean Payton coming in today, saying we got to move things along, and he's like, no, 4 more questions. George Payton can wait, but Sean Payton's team, excited to see him in there, and I think we're going to have some fun press conferences with him this year, but what I gathered was I don't think we're going to get too much from him in terms of just him giving information. He's been at this a while. He can coach speak with the best of them.
Yeah. If anything, I think he used the time to kind of pick on the media a little bit, like telling them that they were the reason that we didn't get Vic Fangio and those kind of things. So it's kind of nice that he kind of uses it that way. Like, if you guys are going to make me be here, I'm going to come after you guys a little bit more. And I don't know. He's got a weird sense of humor that I like. It's kind of edgy, kind of more irritating, of just wanting to kind of get on little people's nerves a little bit. But for the most part, like I said, you can tell the guy has brilliant football mind. He knows what he's doing on that end. And I did like some of his answers talking about some of his coaching staff and why he really liked some of the guys that he brought in. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. Of course, we want to get to the chat here and say hello to all of you guys. But we got Todd coming in saying, hello, building the Broncos crew and Broncos country. Hello to you too, Todd.
Always good to see Todd. He also says, glad to hear that Russell Wilson's office is no more. Read that it was cleared out, and that means he is going to be a teammate of the Broncos. Yeah, Sean Payton's really very much trying to establish the proper power dynamic in the locker room, and we'll see how that plays out. But whether it be dinner meetings or anything like that, accidental or not, Sean Payton has Russell Wilson now as a member of the Broncos. He's always a member, but it's not his team anymore. It's Sean Payton's team.
Yeah. You got to have that true grown up in the room. Sometimes that can be the quarterback, like Peyton Manning. He was the grown up in the room everywhere he went. Tom Brady, he had Bill Belichick. So I guess he had two grown ups in the room at that point. But Russell Wilson's just not that guy. Like, that's just not his personality to be that take charge, get everybody on the same page, all that kind of stuff. So it's good to see Sean Payton really laying down the law and making sure that he's going to do it his way. He's not going to get bullied around by any player, any coach, anybody. I loved one of his answers when he was talking about when he was under Parcells. And he's like, man, I feel more free as a head coach to call plays that I want to call because I don't have to go answer the head coach. I'm the head coach. Mm-hmm. And he's like, sometimes when things didn't work and Parcells would come up and be like, what were you thinking there? He's like, I don't have to do that anymore. So I can be creative. I can do whatever I want. And I'm like, man, that's just, like I said, it's kind of neat to hear his way of thinking. And I'm excited to see what he brings to the offense.
Yeah, the buck stops here with Sean Payton. So we got Dominique Martin coming in saying, Broncos family, looking forward to yet another great podcast, MHH for life, Broncos for life. Good to see you, Dominique. Hope you're well. Kevin Gray also coming in, evening Broncos country. Nick and Carl and Scott, hope everyone have a good day. Doing pretty well. Carl, my internet's kind of dipping in and out here. I don't know what's going on, but hopefully I sound okay to you.
Yeah, your voice is still coming through. Every once in a while, it kind of freezes a little bit. But as long as your voice is coming through, that's what matters, right?
For sure. Yeah, let's keep it rolling here. Good to see Kevin Gray. Mike S. coming in saying, "What's up, Nick, Carl, Scott, Dylan, and Broncos country?" Not too much, Mike. And also, we got Doug coming. I don't recognize this name, Doug Tessier. So says, just listen to Sean Payton's combine interview. He is such a media savvy coach. So glad that we have him. What do you think about Sean Payton's time in the media and how that's impacting his press conferences and how he's dealing with the media now back on the other end of things?
Well, like I said, he was a little not completely snippy, but I mean, he got after the Broncos media a little bit of making some things difficult on his end as a coach now. And I get it. Like, that's part of the media's job, is when you're losing, they're going to question you as coaches and as a franchise and all those kind of things. And obviously Fangio's time here was not great. And Fangio wasn't the easiest guy to like by any means. And so I get a little bit of how that kind of made Fangio not want to come back here to this Denver media and stuff like that. But I mean, you could see he was willing to give more time than what was allotted to him. I think he said like 2 more questions, like 4 different times after 2 more questions. And so you could see like he enjoys this. He enjoys being in front of the media, gets that chance to talk. And so it's going to lead to some pretty neat conferences moving forward, like you said earlier.
Hopefully so. Just curious if he's learned anything on the other end, but you think maybe it would make him a little bit more, gentle on the media, but he's a little bit snarky, I think is what I would use. And he's earned the right to be snarky out there. So it's fun right now. If the Broncos are losing, though, or it's bad, then it can get ugly, but not the same way that Nathaniel Hackett did, where he came in, oh, shucks, oh, golly, oh, gee, and then it got off the rails. But it could get maybe more toxic from the coach's side, but we're living in the honeymoon world right now. Let's just enjoy it. Heath Holmes coming in here saying, "Evening to you guys." Good evening to you, Heath. Good to see you. He says, "It seems that Sean Payton hired Vance Joseph for intangible reasons that can't be explained through defensive stats. Any idea what those intangibles possibly could be?" What do you think, Carl? A, to the first part about intangibles, and then B, what could those intangibles be?
So I'd say intangibles, there's some of that in the sense of VJ is one of those very well-respected people in the league. Like, players love playing for VJ. You won't hear a bad thing from a player perspective. And that says something. Here's a guy that can coach you hard, but you're still going to love to hear what he has to say to you. You want to do well for him. And a lot of times his defenses don't give up. Now, last year in Arizona, that was just a horrible crap storm. Like, everything went wrong, and they just kind of sold out and just said, we're just done with the season. Kind of stinks when you see that happen. And as a coach, I kind of throw those kind of years out a little bit. And on top of that, Arizona's just not had a whole lot of great talent there. Like, I know JJ Watt, but he was injured most of the time and at the end of his career. So he wasn't quite what he was, obviously, when he was one of those defensive players of the year. You had a great safety. You had some very athletic. Well, I mean, he didn't he get like a second all-time or all-pro or something like that? I think he was second team all-pro 1 year.
I just don't know how many great safeties there actually are. Like, to put the word great on it, I think you have Justin Simmons, Derwin James, and Minkah Fitzpatrick. After that, it's good to very good. The Buda Baker, obviously, let's throw out the name here. Good, but I just wanted to say, like, I don't even know if I'd categorize him as great. But so maybe I'm just being harsh.
He's a good player on the field. Like, he's a plus player. Yes. Let's put it that way.
He's a plus player. Building block ability.
Yeah. You had some defensive linemen, some pass rushers that were pretty good during his time. Chandler Jones was there, even though he was kind of at the twilight of his career as well. So a few players that you can look at, but as a whole unit, you're looking at that, especially that secondary. You didn't have a whole lot of talent back there. Throw in, then they had a ton of injuries this past season. And so I think when you're looking at a few of those years where, like, I think he finished 11th in scoring 1 year. I think he finished top 10 DVOA on 2 or 3 of those years with them.
2 of the 4. I think they were top 12.
Okay, top 12. Like, I think he was getting the most of the talent that was there. That's kind of what I look at when I'm looking at a coach. It's not so much, okay, were they a top 5 defense? Okay, were they able to maximize the talent? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say Sean Payton's a horrible coach if the offense isn't top 5 this year, because they don't have a great offensive line. They're getting some of their weapons back from injury. We'll see how Tim Patrick looks. They don't have Javonte Williams, Russell Wilson. We don't know what he's going to be. I'm not going to hold that against Sean Payton and say Sean Payton is horrible at offense if they don't finish top 5. I'm looking at the talent level and saying, okay, did he rise them above what we thought they could be?
Yeah, I agree with you. And Carl, I'm going to walk back my not saying he's great. Scott's in the chat here saying 2-time All-Pro and 5-time Pro Bowler. I guess I have not watched much Cardinals defense, and I don't value the safety that much, but that's some pretty damn good accolades there. So we'll go with great. I will walk that back. I have no pride, right? I'm a married man, so I have no pride. So I will walk that one back. Good, very good, great safety there in Budda Baker, but the rest of them, maybe not as much. So I agree with you. And the other point here about Vance Joseph from Sean Payton saying the situation was not great. I don't think it's just his, and you can correct me. I think maybe Scott has a video on this, but I don't think he didn't just mean the personnel was bad in Arizona. I think he also meant that the path that they had to walk and the teams they had to play were tough as well. I mean, we know how bad Russell Wilson was last season in Denver, but that Seahawks team had some pretty good defenses or offenses during the 2.5 years that Vance Joseph was in Arizona in the NFC West. Kyle Shanahan.
So regarding Vance and Rex and the other defensive coordinators that we interviewed, we went through the process, kind of a couple steps to it. We felt like we were going to be real patient with that hire and try to dig as much as we could relative to the fit and finding the right guy. Rex, Matt, Sean Desai, all those guys were outstanding. But in the end, there were a few things that I felt that Vance was going to bring, and not necessarily because he had experience in Denver, but really more what he was able to do, believe it or not, in Arizona. That was a tough job for a number of years. So we're excited to have him on our defensive staff. We still have a few positions to.
Yeah, so I guess maybe my internet was crapping out there while Scott pulled that up. But the types of teams they're going against were really tough. You obviously the Kyle Shanahan led 49ers, and then everybody trying to mimic him before what Sean McVay did with the Rams. So it's not just the Cardinals were lesser talent on the defensive side of the ball, but the NFC West was arguably the toughest division in football for a defense to go up against over the last half decade, in my opinion, outside of the team that he played for, the Cardinals,
right?
Coach for.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, two of the best offensive play callers in the game. Yeah, that's going to be tough to scheme especially when you have like I said, not the greatest talent to fight against it and having to try to figure out how to play against that. We got James coming in with a $5 super chat. Appreciate that, James, saying if Payton can get our offense going, all VJ has to do is get our defense close to what it was last year. We should be okay. I guess my question would be which part of early season defense or late season defense, because there's two very different pictures that you got going there. And I agree. I mean, I think he's going to get Randy Gregory back. He's going to get a lot of those pieces back that were injured this last year. So he's going to have a chance to have a decent defense that's going to be able to hold up. And to me, if Sean Payton can get the offense into that top 12 range, which I think is very possible. You fix this offensive line, add a few pieces to that group, which I know easier said than done, but I think it is a unit that can be fixed. And then on top of that, you get Tim Patrick back. You get a better offensive system going, a better coaching staff that's, they know what they're doing compared to the last one. You get a better offseason program going, all of that kind of stuff. I think you can have a top 12 offense. I don't think you can have a top 5 quite this year, partly because you're limited because of the quarterback position. But top 12, I think that's very feasible. And then if you can have a top 15 defense, you can win a lot of games with that kind of setup.
Yeah, but that probably puts you in about that 9-8 range. I know you mentioned the top 12 offense. This offense was so bad last year that I need to see it to believe it. Maybe that calls me a skeptic or a hater or something like that, but they were so bad last year. And it doesn't seem like, reading between the lines here, this is just me making perceiving it, but I don't know if Sean Payton loves Russell Wilson and what this offense could be. It just seems like every chance they give him a softball, there's like a little bit of a barrier that he kind of builds up there. He says the PC thing every time, but it's not, building him up like he does, like when he talks about Drew Brees or God, even talking about the dinner. He's like going on and well, yeah, Joe Montana there, man, talking about the 80s. Joe Montana, you're with your quarterback right now. They're asking you about Russell Wilson in this offense. But
Yeah.
Joe Montana, man, this guy over here. So I don't know. It's a little bit weird for me on that one. And I don't want to put myself in. Let's get a top 16 offense first before we even talk about top 12 baby steps from my end. Carl, you shoot for the moon. That's just me. Phil McLaughlin, big stars, 1,000 stars coming in. Thank you so much, Phil, rocking that old school helmet logo there. We love it. Saying good evening, Carl, Nick, and Deacon Scott. I just read that Pro Football Focus is predicting that we will get offensive lineman Jawan Taylor and Draymond Jones will go to the Panthers following Ejiro Evero. Thoughts? Go Broncos and hashtag Buckham. I think there's a chance the Broncos could bring in Jawan Taylor, spend some money on that offensive line. Lord knows they could certainly do that. Now, Jawan Taylor, probably one of the better right tackles on the market. You got him, Caleb McGarry, and Mike McGlinchey currently set to hit the market. We'll see what it looks like when the market actually comes to fruition. But as far as the other one, Draymond to the Panthers, I know you can set up contracts where you don't give guys big money up front, big cap hits up front, but the Panthers are really limited in salary cap this season. They're in a good spot roster-wise. I think they're a really talented roster. I love the coaching staff they've assembled and a high draft pick this year. But the actual ability to pay somebody like a Draymond, I'll believe it when I see it. But there are ways around the cap, especially when you have the second richest owner in the NFL in David Tepper. I believe he's behind the Walton Penner Group.
Yeah, right now.
Yes.
We'll see here in a couple years with the Washington, what happens
Jeffrey
there.
Bezos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that he's using his own paper to badmouth the owner. But Miguel coming in saying, I just hope VJ can scheme better against a tight end. That is what I hated about his defense. So I question this a little bit in the sense of, he was going against Travis Kelce in a lot of those games. I get it. There's other games where he gave up big tight end yards and all that kind of stuff. But obviously when you're going against Travis Kelce twice a year, I'm trying to remember who else was in the league when he was here.
They had the horrible game against George Kittle.
Yeah, but George Kittle's, again, a top 3 tight end in the league. And those guys are they really are, when you find that elite tight end talent, they are the biggest mismatch on the field. It's such a huge weapon to be able to have that available to you. Now, there's not a whole lot of great tight ends out there that you could say that. I think there was the guy that does the RAS score, Math Bomb or whatever. He was talking about this, that tight end is the position that actually has the second least athletic grouping when it comes to just athletic scores. Quarterback was the only one that was worse, because it's hard to find those really great athletic tight ends that are those game changers. And so a lot of times you find those more pure blocking kind of guys, those inline tight ends. And so it's such a different position. There's so many different types of tight ends that you're kind of looking for in the league. And you're not finding a George Kittle or Travis Kelce very often.
Yeah, without a doubt. It will be interesting to see what the Broncos do to stop the tight end, especially Travis Kelce. Still out there, getting older, but still really talented. And for me, the ball's got to go somewhere. I think I'd rather it go to the tight end than wide receiver deep. But, you got to figure it out too. Zach Powers, George Paton feels neutered in his press conference today and during Sean Payton's hiring presser. I truly wonder how much his role has changed during this process. What do you think about this? Did you have George Paton coming off as neutered today in his press conference?
Maybe a little, actually, if I'm being honest. His conference was very short. It was like 13 minutes long. And he wasn't as, eloquent in his speeches he has been in the past, where it just seemed like, hey, I'm the man. I get to make these decisions. And I do think he's still going to have a huge part in the draft. It doesn't seem like Sean Payton's really big into that side of it. He's going to kind of give that to George Paton and say, you run all this. But I think for the most part, you could hear it a little bit. I heard it more in Sean Payton's talk, in the sense of, hey, here in a while, we're going to have 2 days of really breaking down this roster. And to me, it almost sounded like Sean Payton's going to say, hey, here's who I want. You go get them. And George Paton's just going to have to say, yes, sir. That's what it kind of sounded like more to me when I heard Sean Payton talking that kind of side of things with the roster than George Paton in his press conference.
George Paton has more power than he had in Minnesota, and I'm sure he'd rather hold on to this job than he would, being fired and moved on to a new one, although he'd probably be scooped up. But the general manager as the 1B to the head coach is probably better than being a true number 2 or the assistant to the general manager next, kind of like how he was underneath Rick Spielman. So maybe he's lost a little bit of power. This was his team before the Russell Wilson trade. Then it was Russell Wilson's team. Now it's Sean Payton's team. And he's definitely, actually, it's a Walton Penner's team. Then it's Sean Payton. But will be interesting to see how this all plays out in the dynamic there. I don't know if he's been neutered, but I think he's had some of his power curbed, is how I would put it. So Hector Carit coming in here saying, what's up, Broncos? Not too much. Hope you're doing well, Hector. Hope you had a good February. Hope March is going well for you too, or looking up for you. David Mickelrath, one and only. Papa Bear, good to see you. Says, good evening, Broncos country. Nick, Carl, and Deacon Scott. Buckham, MHH for life, and Denver Broncos for life. Good to see you, David. Nathan coming in saying, I think it's Nathan. NN, Mr. Noble, what up? Not too much. What up with you? Dylan Von Arks. Hope you're doing well. Sup, Broncos country. Make sure you guys hit that like button on the way in. Share on your platforms and subscribe if you haven't already. Our guy Greg Smith in the house. Good evening, Broncos country. Awesome to see you. I got a guy, Facebook user. I don't know who this is, but what up, guys? Always love it when Facebook doesn't connect the person on there. It's a little funny. Donnie Claus. Go Broncos. Go Donnie. We appreciate you coming in. And Michael coming in. Michael Lazary saying both Payton and Payton, the double P's, were very upbeat on Vance Joseph, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. I enjoy the wait and see approach because we don't know until you know. We've talked about it on here before. Sean Payton mentioned it, that the situation was not great in Arizona. Granted, you want to have a coordinator that can get the best out of them, even when the situation isn't the best, but he must have done well in his interview. And speaking about his interview, the thing that I thought was really interesting, Carl, was that in the second phase of interviews for the defensive coordinators, you had positional coaches Christian Parker and Marcus Dixon involved in the interview process. Yeah. Did I hear that correctly? When I heard that, my ears perked up. I'm like, wait a second. That's not typically how this is done.
Right. I think, one, it shows how much the Broncos really wanted those guys back. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to show, hey, this is how much power we want to give you in the sense of you get to be a part of this hiring process. Like, you help us pick who you'd like to work for. Because it would have stunk to lose those guys. They are very talented. They're wanted around the league. It's why, especially Christian Parker, you saw him get a couple interviews with other teams. And I'm very thankful that he's coming back, because you look at that Broncos secondary. They've been a great unit since he's been here with the Broncos. You got Justin Simmons looking, like you said, one of the top 3 or 4 safeties in the league. Of course, you got PS2 looking like maybe the best cornerback in the league at this point. Damari Mathis didn't look completely lost this last year. I mean, he was up and down. Don't get me wrong. And he's still learning the difference.
For a 4th-round rookie, though.
Yeah, right. I mean, but he was kind of thrown into the fire, and he held his own for the most part. Like I said, he had some bad moments. Don't get me wrong. He'll do better. But again, that whole secondary looked pretty darn good for the Broncos. Held up, especially once they started losing all their pass rushers. And that secondary had to try to hold up and hold the team together. And they did okay, considering everything else going on. But we got Michaela coming in saying, good evening, Broncos country. Good evening to you as well, Michaela.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Michaela. Chase Wellner, our guy, hope you're doing well. And Michael Ronquillo coming in here, big-time star giver. He's been starring it up all month long. February's got to be number 1 in the stars. If not number 1, then I don't know who's on your butt, but that would be incredible. But Michael, our guy, saying, good evening, Nick and Carl, on building the Broncos. Go Broncos and Buckham. We appreciate you, Michael, for all the support. And, not everybody has to be like Michael coming into the stars. We do appreciate that first and foremost. But if you haven't, make sure you hit that thumbs up and rock on, says Chad Jensen. Chad, hope you're doing well over there on YouTube land. Hope we're holding down the show with as to your quality with Zach and your show on the Huddle Up podcast. So let's keep it going here. Sean Payton, any other topics of conversation that came from Sean Payton's interview that really stood out for you? I think number 1 for me was talking about the strength and conditioning staff that they're bringing in, and just how renowned and excited there seems to be an energy for the hirings that they've made there.
Yeah, and it sounds like they've already come to the building, already starting to make some major changes with the nutrition, the weight room, all those kind of things. And so you love to hear that. Now, change just for the sake of change, obviously it's not the best thing, but it's an area that needed a huge upgrade. And I really do think that could be one of the biggest differences from last year to this year. Let's say half the injuries, you cut your injuries in half from last year. Like, what could that team have done if some of these players stayed healthy? Tim Patrick, if he played this past season, what does that mean for that offense? In some of those close games, they lost a lot of games, but in that 1 touchdown score, Tim Patrick, big player in the red zone. Broncos are struggling with the red zone early on. And Joseph coming in here. Here we go. We got the positive. We got the optimist coming in saying 11-5 for this season. And I hope you're right. I really do. It'd be great to finally see a winning team again for the Broncos. And we got Brendacho coming in saying we're not skeptics, just rational. We have zero data to back up the idea that our offense will be successful next year. You're right. I mean, it's all brand new. So I guess part of me is just looking at Sean Payton and looking at his history. Not only, I mean, obviously he worked with Drew Brees, but in many ways he kind of helped Drew Brees become Drew Brees.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason that Drew Brees was cut by the Chargers and decided they're going to move on. There's a reason that the Dolphins were like, nah, we're not going to sign him. And Sean Payton took that chance. And I mean, they both helped each other. Don't get me wrong. It's a two-way street there on that. But even beyond that, I mean, he had Jameis Winston finally looking like he was a competent quarterback. He had Teddy Bridgewater looking like a top 15, 16 quarterback in the league when he was starting there for a little bit. And so he's done it with a few different guys. On top of that, you look at just his time as an offensive coordinator. So I'm kind of looking at all those things and saying, okay, this guy's proven time and time again, he can get the best out of a quarterback. And so with Russell Wilson, he's never going to be that top 5 guy again, in my opinion. I mean, something crazy is going to have to happen. But if you can, again, get him in that top half of the league as a quarterback, that's a huge step forward. And if you improve that run game, improve that offensive line, again, you can have a competent offense that doesn't cost you games.
Which would be a change of pace in Denver. Haven't had that since probably midway through 2014. So that would be great. Our guy D-Generation X, hope everybody had a good day. It was pretty good. Busy at work, but what can you do? That's life. Clayton here on Evening Guys. Smash that like button and share. Loving all the staff coming together. Can't wait for the season. Going to be a different team this year. Cooking Russ, baby. And talk about all the staff changes. I know Scott has a video on the Broncos hiring Bo Lowry. A lot of conversation today about the Broncos from Sean Payton bringing in Bo Lowry, much a data-driven person there for the Broncos in the strength and conditioning side of things. So will be interesting to hear what Bo Lowry does, but there seems to be some real excitement about having him in Denver.
So during the interview process, his name came up. I talked about things that I thought were important. It's hard to have a great training room in the NFL. I mean, it's kind of like I don't know. I think the 32 teams, there's always that feeling there's a better training room somewhere else, right? And I watched our transition when Bo came in New Orleans and how the players responded, not only just the veteran players, but some of the younger players. And if you just Google searched the amount of players that send him congratulations or had comments, it gives you an idea how he was thought of. So it's kind of hard to have that. But when you have it, like you recognize it's special because he's firsthand, like dealing with the injuries and dealing with, the setbacks. And it can be a lonely place if you're a player, while you're missing time. He's very much respected. I mean, he fellowed under Andrews. We lost him in New Orleans, and we tried not to. But he wanted to live a little bit closer to Baton Rouge, and that's why he went back up there. But that's a game changer for us.
Yeah, real excited about him coming in, and that's something even before the Broncos had fired Nathaniel Hackett. One of the first things when we saw them bring in the new coaching or the new ownership group is that, okay, no expenses now. Where can the Broncos get benefits of building this team? You can't pay for more draft picks. You can't just pay for more salary cap. You can pay big time for coaches. Broncos still traded for one, but I digress. And the training staff, the analytics side of things, the training, bring in the best one possible. If money is no object issue, injuries have been an issue here. Even if that changes, let's say you're 5 or 10% more healthy next season, what does that add up to over a decade in terms of wins and losses and careers and guys wanting to come here? So really excited to have Bo Lowry in here. It sounds like, again, proof will be in the pudding, as they like to say. Over long term, we'll see what if it is effective, because, you ask a lot of people, Orlando was respected too. The results weren't there for the Broncos on that end, but it seems like Sean Payton is really excited about bringing in Bo Lowry to this organization and getting him out. My only concern listening to that is like, well, let's say 2 years from now, he's getting a little homesick. for Baton Rouge, missing that gumbo. Are there any good gumbo places in Denver? You guys got to hit him up. But that's my only real concern coming out of that is maybe it's not a long-term thing because he might get homesick and want to head back. Because if New Orleans is not close enough to Baton Rouge, then what's Denver?
Yeah. I think the other thing when we're talking about some of the staff, when he talked about some of the young guys that he's bringing in, the Joe Webb to be quarterback Davis Webb, sorry. And we got Robot of Doom saying, good evening, Broncos country. Good evening to you as well there. And we got Naj coming in. I'll get back to the coaches here, but considering the constant toxicity reported around Wilson and the Seattle coaches and players, it seems teammates haven't responded favorably to him. Do you think this is the case with the majority of his teammates in Denver? I think it's been a mixed bag. So like this last week, you had Cliff Averill and Marshawn Lynch both come to bat for Russell Wilson, talking about him being a great teammate and the guy that cared about him, cared about their families, those kind of things. I think Wilson does have that personality that can rub guys the wrong way. I mean, we've obviously seen that with Richard Sherman. He's spoken quite a few times about how much he really hated Russell Wilson. And in some ways, he's almost kind of taken this victory lap all year to make fun of him. And there's been a few other players. And now obviously the report that's coming out of he tried to get the coach and GM fired and all those kind of things. And it just, again, he's got that kind of personality that makes people kind of want to attack him at times. Like he's an easy target. We've tried to, I think of it as like with my daughter, we're trying to teach her to kind of toughen up and stand up for herself because she's so nice. She almost becomes an easy target. And I hate it. Like, I hate that happens to her. And it's kind of the same thing with Wilson. Like, I want to go defend him because I'm like, hey, this is a nice guy. I mean, he's going to the hospital. He's doing all these things. And you got all these people just coming after him with everything they've got. And I don't know. I think in Denver, I think his teammates are okay with him. I think there's going to be some that really love him. There's going to be some that are just like, we'll put up with him as long as the team's winning.
It's hard to really answer this from where we sit. We don't know him personally. We're not in the locker room every day. We're not his teammate. We're not his coach. But I do think that him coming in, being given so many privileges last season, his wife and kids on the field and training facility, multiple parking spots, people in the facility, his own office on the second floor, not having to deal with the locker room, and then coming out and playing like that would create issues when the team is losing. I'll play the season. I think it's overdone at this point, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And do you put that on him or do you put that on the coaching staff and GM for giving him too much power? Like they kind of set this up of, it's like if I tell my kid, hey, here's this box of candy over here. You can be in this kitchen and I'll just let you make the choice of what you're going to do with it. And then of course my kid's going to go eat everything that he possibly can, probably run to the bathroom, throw up, come back and eat more. And I'm not trying to compare him to like a little child or anything like that, but it just, sometimes if somebody gives you that inch, you're going to go take that mile if you got the opportunity.
And I think that, he had a lot of plays designed and stuff that he wanted to run, and it was a ugly Frankenstein offense out there and it didn't work. So I think hopefully he has the wherewithal to understand that, hey, last season, what I thought would be good and what I kind of wanted done in Seattle that didn't happen, maybe it isn't good. Maybe I was wrong. And if I want to be the best version of myself as a football player as I possibly can, I need to get coaching. I mean, he said like Sean Payton was the guy he wanted. I thought it was pretty funny that Sean Payton mentioned Drew Brees saying that, like, listen, you need to go on to Denver already because I'm getting tired of Russell Wilson blowing up my bleeping phone.
Yeah.
Like you need to get it was said in jest, but like it was, he wanted him there. So hopefully he'll be receptive to coaching and that can kind of level the playing field and get him to buy in to whatever message is there because everybody should know last year wasn't good enough.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you a question because he did talk about the young coaches that he's brought in. Mm-hmm. And he talked about how Purcell's was the same way of wanting the young coaches. One, because it helps him stay young. But two, he kind of likes that being able to coach them up as well. Like coach them to become great coaches and kind of raise up that next generation of coaches. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you kind of look at the defensive staff, very veteran, very, hey, I can let you guys go do your thing. I don't have to worry about you. Offensive staff, you got a lot of first-time guys at their positions. I mean, Joe Lombardi, of course, he's been there for a long time. He's done all this. But beyond him, your offensive line coach, never been the true number one top guy there. Davis Webb for the quarterback's coach, he's going to be younger than Russell Wilson. So it's kind of a weird dynamic there of this guy that's 28 years old is now on your coaching staff working with who should be your star player.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's such a young staff on the offensive side of the ball. From the running backs coach, wide receivers coach, the offensive line coach, the quarterback coach, they're all, I believe, first time in their official positions there. Some of them have been assistant positions before, first time at the NFL level, at least. So very young staff. Luckily, Sean Payton and Joe Lombardi are old heads, so to speak. So this isn't their first gig. And I'd be really concerned if it was their first time. We had hired a first-time head coach, and then you had all these first-timers.
Mm-hmm.
Not great. I do wish they had a little bit more young blood on the defensive side of the ball with some of the spots there, but that's okay. I think this is an interesting staff that's coming together here. I really like a lot of the names, but it's coaching. Over time, we'll get an idea of who these guys are because we don't know, right? Right now, they're just names on a resume.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I like the potential. I think you're going to have some growing pains with those young guys because, again, they're stepping into things that they've never really quite stepped into. And thankfully, they do have that veteran of Sean Payton and Joe Lombardi that they can lean on and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to figure out. This is how I'm trying to communicate to this player. What do you think about this? So, I mean, there's going to be that mentor program built within that. And it's kind of nice also. Some of that is, okay, these guys, maybe they're around for a few years. Then they start getting these offensive coordinator and head coach positions. Then Broncos start getting some draft picks back for some of them, which is kind of a nice little bonus that they could be bringing in. I'm just thinking future on some of this, but even beyond that, again, if you're kind of raising up that next generation, it kind of helps then want to bring other coaches in saying, hey, look what they did for this guy. They got him a head coach job. Boom, I want to come to Denver as that young guy. So I think there's a lot of things that could go really well with this.
You'd hope, right? You'd hope, but we'll find out over time. There's just no way to know for sure. And we should probably move on to a few of the comments here from George Paton. The neutered George Paton, I guess, as the comment section said in here earlier. I won't lie to you. I got a really big kick out of him saying, the sweet spot of this draft is the beginning of the third round. Maybe within the first 5 picks of the third round. I think that's the best spot in this draft.
Right, yeah. Ignore that Jalen Carter and all those kind of guys.
Oh, God, that really did make me crack up. Did you ever watch SNL back in the day or any of the classic SNL videos?
Oh, yeah.
Dana Carvey as Church Lady.
Yeah.
When he's like, oh, isn't that convenient? That's like just immediately where my head went. So like, oh, the first 5 picks in the third round. How great. But I think you can get some good players there if the Broncos want. As we sit here today, February 28th, though, what are the odds that you'd give the Broncos are keeping both of those picks?
10%.
Okay. I was going to say 10 to 15.
Yeah. One, we know George Paton. Mm-hmm. He's always had that mentality. I want more draft picks. Even if it's later picks, I'd rather have more, darts at the board than, have some that are maybe a step closer kind of thing. And so, of course, he's going to want to trade one of those. And usually you don't see a lot of teams that do back-to-back picks. Yeah. You kind of see them use that as a way to get their one guy and then figure out something. But we got Gary Palmer coming in with a super chat. Really appreciate that, Gary. Good to see you. Always nice to see that name pop up on the screen.
Yeah. GLP, always good to see. Also want to give a shout out to William Hayes, and I can't figure out why the Broncos don't get any comp picks. Oh, man. We can go into a while for this. So they just started giving out comp picks for minority coaches and minority front office people that have been with an organization for 2 years, moving for a promotion. We haven't seen those doled out yet, but I believe they'll be coming this year for the first time. Broncos haven't had any minority coaches get promotions that I can recall from last year's staff. So none there. And then also what good players did the Broncos let walk that have signed elsewhere? The last time I can remember the Broncos getting a high compensatory pick was when they let Malik Jackson go, and they got an early third round pick that might have turned out to be the Justin Simmons pick. There was like one that was crossed out. We should have gotten 2 third round comp picks that year. We only got one because of
Brock Osweiler.
Okay. So the Malik Jackson one got canceled out.
Then one of those 2 did.
Okay, because
So
of the
you
Russell
had
Okung signing.
right, and so and that was such a weird one because he signed for the like $5 million, but had some kind of extra thing on his contract.
The
I
Broncos
can't.
voided. The Broncos
So
voided. Like it was like if it was the next league year, then it would be like turned into a 4 more year contract with big money. And like, well, he never saw that money, so why is he getting charged for that comp pick? I guess they probably go by APY over the exact signing of the deal versus what he actually got paid. But that one always kind of chafed my chaps, if you will. But yeah, the comp picks essentially. So let's say the Broncos let Draymond Jones walk this season and he gets paid 20 million APY by another team. That means the Broncos next season would probably be getting a third round compensatory pick for him unless they sign a player in free agency of equivalent value. So let's say Broncos let Draymond Jones walk for 20 million a year. They sign Mike McGlinchey for 18 million a year. I don't know what the market's going to be for either of those guys, but just an example. The signing of Mike McGlinchey would cancel out the comp pick you'd be getting for Draymond Jones. Essentially, those would just be evens. So you would get no picks. Now, if the Broncos, and we can get really in the hairs here, like the guys who are, let's say the Broncos cut Garrett Bowles because he's a cap casualty, a cut, he wouldn't count against the comp pick. So a team that would sign him, he wouldn't count against their comp pick formula, their return. So it's a little complicated. There's some really good work out there by Nick Korte, Korte on Twitter, who does some really good comp pick works. He's one of the first ones to, I think, break the NFL secret comp pick formula a few years ago. But it's a convoluted, complicated, but that's essentially the gist of it.
Yep, for sure. And so, if the Broncos do let Draymond Jones walk, then really start looking at that cut list as much as you possibly can. If the Broncos really want to start building up their draft capital again, that was one nice thing during the Peyton Manning years. There were some players actually getting paid. The Broncos did have at least a couple comp picks each of those years. But when you're a bad team with bad players, unfortunately, you kind of stay there at the bottom. That's why the Chiefs, they could have a lot of comp picks again this year. They just had a bunch last year. It just kind of works that way when you got talent. But we got George Fox saying, great content, guys. Thanks, Denver Broncos for life. Hashtag MHH for life. Good to see you, George. And we got Jeremy coming in saying, good evening, Carl and Nick and Scott and Dylan. Good evening to you as well there, Jeremy. And so I guess on that note, I wanted to ask you. So it does sound like they're going to let Draymond Jones test the market. I don't know if they're using that as kind of a tactic to get him to lower his price and say, hey, we're stuck at this number at 16 million. I know you're up there at 18, 19 million. We're going to let you go hit the market and see what you can go get. Good luck. And maybe he's going to come back and say, you know what, maybe that 16 million sounds good. I don't know what they're trying to do with all that. But let's say you do have that choice between paying that right tackle or paying Draymond Jones. Which direction would you rather go for the Broncos?
I would probably rather keep Draymond Jones because I think a singular interior pass rusher is going to make more of a difference than a singular offensive tackle. And also I think that Draymond Jones is as good, if not better, than any of the right tackles that are likely to hit the market. I do not think that McGarry will end up hitting the market. I think you'll have to pick between McGlinchey, who's had a number of injuries, and Jawan Taylor, who fell in the draft from like mid first round to mid second, I believe, because of a knee issue that popped up. They think that might be degenerative. Off the top of my head, you could correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But I would probably rather keep Draymond. Another reason is because with Vance Joseph, you're probably going to be in a more of an attacking front of defense. I believe Sean Payton talked about that some as well today, really dialing up some of the pressure and getting some of those guys isolated in one-on-one situations, which to me screams Draymond Jones, whether it be 4-eye or 3 technique or 5 or even 7 sometimes with the twists and stunts up front. So I think I'd rather keep Draymond Jones.
Yeah, the only thing I'm torn on with that a little bit is the list of free agent defensive linemen that I think can be at least decent players for you compared to the list of right tackles that are going to be hitting the market. Very different. Like I said, after those top 3 guys that you mentioned there, who would you put at number 4 that's going to be maybe hitting the market?
Cam Fleming, baby.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, really,
maybe there'll be some cuts.
Yeah, and I guess you could argue Andrew Wiley from the Chiefs.
Maybe.
But is it more that they just had a great offensive line that they could help cover him up? or was it that he was actually a decent right tackle? You could argue either way, but again, I think Cam Fleming could be that next guy. Like if you decide, hey, we're going to keep Draymond Jones, I would say probably your next signing would be Cameron Fleming to me, just so you got that. Okay, at least we've got that in our bag. And then we can go to the draft. If we get a guy that's better, that's great. If not, we've at least got a competent guy that can come in and play for a year.
Yeah, without a doubt. Phil McLaughlin coming in again. Thank you so much, Phil. Says, I really liked hearing George Paton say that Javonte Williams is on schedule to open the season and Tim Patrick will be 100%. Hope this is true. I got to say, I'm pretty darn skeptical of Javonte Williams being ready to go by the season opener. They said that he's just starting to jog. You're not going to have enough information by the time free agency rolls around to the draft to make that decision. Now, he did say that they're going to definitely bring in another running back, if not two, over the offseason. So I think this is a little bit of, we still love Javonte Williams, but we're going to set ourselves up where we're going to be safe with the position. And maybe we're not going to, go crazy with spending on that spot, but adding one or two to me says that we like Javonte Williams. Obviously, we hope he's healthy, but we're going to put ourselves in a situation where just in case he isn't healthy.
Yeah. What did you think about his comments of keeping Chase Edmonds at the running back position?
He's under contract right now. I would be shocked if he was under the same contract come the start of next season. So if they didn't tip their hand at all as far as moving on from anybody in this one. So anybody who's still under contract is under contract as far as I can recall. But I would still be pretty damn shocked if he's here for $6 million next year.
Yeah, I would be too. I do think he's actually a decent fit for the Sean Payton offense. He's a decent receiving option, got some speed, got some scat back ability for you out there. So I do think that there's a good chance that the Broncos do try to keep him some way, somehow. But like I said, not at the $6 million mark. You might as well just go get yourself one of that like number 5 running back that's hitting the market. Because I would guess 6 to 8 million would probably get that next guy.
Probably pretty darn close for that money. So we'll see. More thoughts. George Paton, we talked about that. What do you think about Tim Patrick coming back as well? I mean, we missed him last year, man. Hopefully he's good. The other bit of information in George Paton things, talking about wide receiver, pretty ho-hum about Jerry Jeudy in the 5th-year option, saying that he played pretty well down the stretch, and we'll come to that point when we get there. Maybe it's far enough out that they would, exercise it, but it always sounded like to me that this regime wasn't previous coaching regime, and this front office regime wasn't the biggest Jerry Jeudy fans in comparison to some other guys. Granted, that's the regime that took with George Paton took Justin Jefferson, who maybe the best wide receiver in football.
Right.
But that one came off weird to me. I read that one as like, we love Jerry Jeudy. Of course, we're going to extend that option. But it didn't read like they were all about it. Yeah.
I mean, you and I would think that would be a pretty obvious decision to make because it's not going to cost you a whole lot considering the wide receiver market. And even if you give him that 5th-year option, then he can still be a great trade piece for you as well. Because then he's got that 2 years of control for the next couple here. And that would be very promising to a team trying to get him. So, yeah, I think they'll still do it. But you're right. Maybe they are a little more ho-hum on some of that. And maybe they do have their eyes on a couple wide receivers that they really like and think maybe they could restart that timetable, because again, he only has those 2 years of control left. Is Jerry Jeudy going to be willing to sign here long-term? I don't know. How much is that going to cost when you're looking at the wide receiver market and how much they're getting paid? Do you really want to pay that? I've kind of been big on take a wide receiver every couple years because then you help keep that room at least a little bit cheaper, maybe even every year, really. But use that, a 2nd, 3rd round pick on a wide receiver. And yeah, this is not the best wide receiver class. There's some decent names out there, I think, that could be there in the 3rd, 4th round. Honestly, it's probably the better sweet spot compared to some of the top names that will go that I think will be overdrafted just because of the wide receiver market. But yeah, maybe they are, again, just kind of viewing it as this is us trying to show, hey, he's available for trade. I don't know.
Will be interesting, no doubt. Jeremy coming in and talking about Draymond and saying hopefully he won't get a contract from a desperate team that's cap rich. I'd prefer to keep him here at an affordable rate. Talking about Draymond Jones, sounds like he's going to hit the open market. I think if he hits the open market, he's gone. And talk about cap rich teams who would be desperate. I've heard before, and then I heard it again. I heard weeks ago. I heard it again. The Chicago Bears are a team to keep an eye out for Draymond Jones. Eberflus really needs a single gap penetration, under tackle, 3 technique type, and Draymond would be a great fit for that. So I think obviously there's Jalen Carter out there as well, but I mean, they're both versatile enough. There's plenty of snaps for multiple good interior pass rushers on a bad, terrible Bears defense. So I do think if he hits the market, the Chicago Bears are a team to watch out for Draymond Jones.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense for them. And there's a lot of teams that have some money that they're just going to be able to throw around.
Mm-hmm.
We saw with the Jaguars last year a little bit where they just were like, man, we got all this money. We can overpay and it's going to be okay. Like it's going to hurt, but it's not going to be destroying of our roster kind of thing. And I mean, the Jaguars have done this a lot of years and it has destroyed their roster, but they finally have a quarterback, finally have a coach. And so, like I said, you can go out there and overpay a little bit for some guys and still have a really good roster around you. And like I said, Bears got a lot of money to spend. They got to get a few things that they got to get figured out there. There's, I don't know, about 4 teams. I think they have to pay this year, if I remember right, because a lot of them they haven't reached that 90% of spending on the cap.
Yeah.
And so it's not even that they want to spend, they have to spend.
Yeah, 100%. And before we start to wrap it on up here, did you see that Pete Carroll was asked about Russell Wilson today as well? And Pete Carroll, the question was, how surprised were you that Russell Wilson struggled last season? And what do you think about his pairing with Sean Payton? And then Pete Carroll immediately goes to, Broncos are extremely fortunate they got Sean Payton to go to Denver. So again, a subtle jab, but it seems like another jab there from Pete Carroll. Makes me think that this Russell Wilson going to ownership, trying to get Carroll and Schneider fired is probably true, or at least there was definitely some hurt feelings there in relationships. But man, Pete Carroll again taking a swing, and I think he's just going to keep doing that as long as Russ continues to struggle.
Right, and I think he even talked about how Russ kind of limited their playbook and what they could do, where all of a sudden this year they were able to open up and do some things that they haven't been able to do these past years. Now, to me, I'm kind of going, that's pretty much with every quarterback, though. Like, they're going to have at least some kind of limitation on their game.
Russ is so limited, though, in the types of routes that you can run. And, like, I think I want to give credit to Deontay Lee, who's a really good sports analyst, does stuff. He's a coach as well for The Athletic, worked for PFF for a while as well, talking about, like, no matter what coaches come in, eventually everything reverts back into the Russell Wilson offense, which is, the heavy play action, deep shots.
Right.
And because of the limitations in where he can target the field and the types of routes that he can run and see. So I think it probably has a lot to do with that limitation compared to other quarterbacks. And we'll see what it looks like with Sean Payton this season. There'll obviously be different wrinkles with how the game is played right now, but I'm curious to see if everything still ends up dissolving into what is quote unquote the Russell Wilson offense.
Right. No, I just more mean, I think, like I said, he took a lot of jabs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of going, this quarterback helped you guys win a lot of games. And so I'm kind of like, I understand it was a very messy divorce between the two of them. And I mean, if Russ probably spoke honestly on the situation, he'd be speaking very horribly about Pete Carroll and their coaching staff and things like that as well. I just think it's kind of I don't know. For me, I'm just like, just forget about it. Like, it's over. You've moved on. Mm-hmm. You guys had a pretty good season compared to what a lot of people thought you would do. Got yourself a top 5 pick. You've come out on top. Now act like you've been there. Like, you don't have to take these swings down low to feel better about yourself, I guess. And that's just kind of how I feel about the situation. That's just kind of how I am. I just kind of hate when people have to, they take that victory lap and have to take those shots at people on their way around the lap as well. But we got Phil coming back in saying, hey guys, what do you think about Devon Achane? I never get that name right.
I think it's Achane.
Achane and Drew Sanders. Well, a lot of athleticism, a lot of speed. Something that you can't coach. So that's always kind of a nice quality that you can have on the team. And the NFL has really shown, obviously, it's gone to a game of speed. If you can find that guy can stretch a field, that can turn it into a home run on any given play, that's a huge asset to have for you.
Yeah, Achane, dynamic athlete. I'm curious what he can do in the pass game. They didn't really utilize him there that much in Texas A&M, mainly because I think the quick pass game from the quarterback position wasn't great, but he looked great back there behind not a great offensive line for those Aggies. So really dynamic player, could also add to your special teams. So I'm not really a huge fan of taking running back early if you can help it. But if A-Chain's there and you're looking to add some instant impact and home run ability from your running back position, then when it's pick 67, pick 68, Devon A-Chain should be on the short list, in my opinion, if he's there.
I would say a little bit of that depends on what else you do at the running back position, because he cannot be your feature back.
No,
he's too small to be that guy.
Yeah. But we've seen Sean Payton in the past likes to use a rotation of running backs. That's even before the rotation of backs was big. Right. I mean, he was on the forefront of that, and now everybody's essentially doing that. So like Devon A-Chain, Drew Sanders, really unique player, good length, really good blitzer, went to Alabama. I think he was a 5-star recruit as an edge rusher to Alabama, transferred to Arkansas and has moved to off-ball linebacker. Versatile player. If he falls to the third round, I'd be all about it. Because of what you can do with him with pressures up front, versatility. He's still figuring it out as a linebacker. I don't think his processing and instincts are very good right now, but the tools that he has, especially if you want to be a front that is going to blitz up the A gap and the B gap with your linebackers, he'd offer a completely different skill set than Josie Jewell. Now, you're still not really solving your coverage linebacker look that you're going there, but you're bringing somebody who's dynamic in the rushing length department that you don't have on the field right now that would be good for an attacking front seven.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense there. So yeah, 2 great players for the Broncos if that's what ends up happening. But like you said, you probably have to try to find some other players that can complement what they don't bring to the table. And we got Patrick coming in here all the way from Hawaii saying, aloha, gents. Aloha to you as well. Had a cup of your coffee this morning. Still riding that high right now. So thank you very much there, Patrick, for the stars and for coming in here today.
And you know what I love about aloha, Carl? It's hello and goodbye. And we're going to have to aloha out of here as well. I think at least it's hello and goodbye. But we appreciate the heck out of you guys coming in. We got to get on out of here. We're approaching an hour now. So appreciate you. Make sure you're following Carl on Twitter. Carl is at Carl Dumler, MHH. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also, make sure you're following us at BFB_pod and at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you're joining our Facebook group at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure you're subscribing, liking, and sharing to our channel at Mile High Huddle over on YouTube. Really, anything else, Carl, before we get on out of here? Anything? I think we hit on all the major points from the press conference today. Hope Combine's really getting in here. We didn't talk very much about the players yet, but we'll get a chance next week once all the data matriculates through.
Yeah, I guess I'll end with that question. Who's one player at this Combine that you really want to see how they test?
Lucas Van Ness. I mean, that's self-serving there, but Lucas Van Ness from Iowa, is he going to run a sub 4.5 40 at 6'5", 275 pounds and jump like they're talking about? I mean, if he is, that's a top 10 pick, probably in this class specifically. So I'm curious to see how he tests.
All right, we got Michael coming in one last time saying, great show tonight, Nick and Carl, and building the Broncos. Go Broncos and buck 'em. Good to have you, Michael. Good to have all of you here this evening.
Yeah, well, that's going to have to do it for us, guys. Hope everyone had a great February. Hope March is just as good, if not better. And make sure you're continuing to choose kindness and compassion. As always, go Broncos.